Brian Wolff. I'm a professional environmental conservation biologist and a former ecology and natural history instructor. I'm standing next to 9 Mile Creek in what is known as the 9 Mile Creek Corridor. Today is the 29th of May, 2024. It's hard for me to believe it's been so long, but I first stood in this spot more than 60 years ago. I've been a regular visitor to this area since 1963. I have fond memories of playing with friends and fishing along the creek in the 1960s. As a college biology student, taking courses in ornithology, mammalogy, and plant taxonomy, I would come here in the 1970s to work on my plant and animal identification skills. In the late 1970s, I'd often bring my girlfriend, Chris, with me. She developed a strong interest in the plants and animals I came to see, and in 1980, she began accompanying me as my wife. In the 1990s, we started bringing our son and daughter here. I clearly recall my son playing in the creek just over my left shoulder. By the mid-1990s, I was making trips into the corridor in order to collect images and specimens for classroom use. Prior to my father's passing in 2001, 3 generations of my family commonly walked the corridor together on Easter Sundays, Thanksgivings, and Christmas Eves. One beautiful Christmas Eve, I recall spotting 9 owls belonging to 2 different species on a twilight walk from about here to the Minnesota River. Beginning in about 2010, I started bringing ecology and natural history students here. It's a good place to study both subjects. I think it is fair to say that I know this corridor very well. It is unquestionably accurate to say that it is important to me. I've come here today to create a video documentary and to talk with other visitors about some changes that may be coming to this wonderful park. Changes that could greatly diminish the beauty of the corridor, disturb its peaceful character, harm its wildlife, and negatively impact the entire ecosystem. The changes I'm referring to are those that would accompany the development of 1 or more bicycle paths through this narrow corridor. This partially paved pedestrian-friendly trail currently winds through the 9 Mile Creek corridor from the Harrison picnic grounds below Moyer Park to the Minnesota River Valley. The corridor itself runs in a north-south direction for approximately 1.5 miles. The trail with its many twists and turns is roughly 2.5 miles long, as I recall. There are a number of side trails like the one I'm standing on now. Here I feel like I could be many miles from the city. I cannot sight a building, hear passing automobiles, or see any trappings of urban life. Though I'm in a metropolis, there is a wonderfully natural look and feel to this place. I didn't have to walk very far before encountering this great blue heron. This is the most commonly observed heron here in the corridor. We've also seen lots of green herons while walking this trail. In the past, I sometimes encountered black-crowned night herons. Unfortunately, they've become rare. Even when they're around, they're difficult to spot because they nest in the trees by day and hunt at night. As I continue down the main trail, I cannot help but notice that this portion of 9 Mile Creek looks different from stretches further upstream. Over most of its course, the creek winds through relatively flat ground, and its banks are not very high. Here it runs between steep-sided bluffs. The origins of this steep-sided corridor are interesting. During the last ice age, meltwater from retreating glaciers accumulated behind a moraine located near Big Stone in northwestern Minnesota. Eventually, a lake larger than all of the Great Lakes combined was formed behind that moraine. Roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago, this Great Lake, Lake Agassiz, topped the Big Stone moraine. The immense amount of water that poured from the lake tore across Minnesota and cut the wide, deep valley that the Minnesota River follows today. As the water in the creek enters the rather deep Minnesota River valley, its velocity increases. It thus has more erosive power, and through the years, it has cut the deep-sided corridor I am in now. As previously noted, it is nearly impossible to see the surrounding city from down inside the corridor. The corridor walls and the trees lining them also block out noise. The breezes that flow, like the creek, within the walls of the corridor, further mask the sounds of modernity, as does the music produced by running water and bird song. It is no wonder that visitors use adjectives like beautiful, charming, lovely, peaceful, and serene to describe this unique place. Unfortunately, the beauty of the 9 Mile Creek corridor tends to hide some serious environmental and ecological problems. Water quality within the creek has been degraded by pollution to such an extent, for example, that some native fish and invertebrates can no longer live within its banks. Harmful fertilizers, automobile fluids, road salt, silt, sand, heavy metals, and toxic organic chemicals all flow into the creek, which is sadly listed as an impaired water body by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Before addressing the problem of water pollution in class, I'd frequently ask my environmental biology students to list the 3 or 4 most ecologically important pollutants entering the creek. Their lists seldom, if ever, included heat, yet heat is an extremely important pollutant. Historically, most of the precipitation falling within the 9 Mile Creek watershed percolated into the ground. Today, I suspect a third of the rain falling within the watershed lands on impervious surfaces. The city's roadways, parking lots, and blacktop trails heat this water. It then pours through storm sewers and into the creek. Heat stresses fish and invertebrates by boosting their metabolism and their demand for oxygen. At the same time, it reduces the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. The warmer the water, the less oxygen it can hold. In the years that I've been visiting the corridor, the cold water species, like trout, have disappeared. Today, the creek is dominated by more thermally tolerant species. Black bullheads and carp are now dominant. Pavement within the watershed also causes water levels in the creek to fluctuate excessively. The water that currently surges into the creek when it rains once percolated into the ground or flowed into wetlands. From there, it slowly and steadily made its way into the creek. This rather steady flow of water fed the creek during times of drought and prevented water levels from falling as far as they do today. As one would anticipate, life in the creek is stressed during periods of reduced flow. During periods of high flow, the creek banks are eroded, segments of the trail are often damaged, and bridge footings are weakened. If I had to select one measure to gauge the creek's overall health, I wouldn't measure fertilizer levels, industrial chemical concentrations in the water, or the number of plastic bottles floating on the creek's surface. I would measure the acreage of impervious surfaces in the watershed. When a watershed gets to the point of about 10% of its surface area covered in impervious surfaces, it tends to suffer environmentally. Not surprisingly, I support replacing impervious surfaces with water gardens and green spaces in order to improve water quality. In the same vein, I oppose the laying of additional pavement within the 9 Mile Creek watershed. Okay. Some people think that an impervious bike trail's impact on water quality would be imperceptible and insignificant. This kind of thinking is dangerous. The biggest environmental problems we currently face have grown to staggering proportions precisely because most projects appear to pose little threat when viewed in isolation, but do great harm in the aggregate. I've chosen to stop here because these flowers interest me. They're very attractive, but also problematic. This is Dame's Rocket. It's one of a number of invasive alien plants displacing our native species. The invasive plants that are taking over the corridor pose the greatest threat to the wildlife community bordering the creek. Our native plants and animals evolved together for thousands of years, and natural selection shaped each to fit into the greater whole. The natural system that was created, that is the ecosystem, kept populations in check, cycled nutrients, moderated temperatures, prevented diseases from eliminating species, and fostered biodiversity, which made the community resilient to abiotic stressors. If nothing is done to reverse the spread of the corridor's invasives, our native plants will continue to disappear. Food webs will increasingly be disrupted, biodiversity will decline, ecological processes will be impaired, and the biotic community will become more and more vulnerable to abiotic stressors, that is to change, including the change associated with climate change. Thankfully, the City of Bloomington plans to remove many of the invasive plants I'm seeing today and encourage the growth of ecologically important natives. Economic constraints will limit what is done, but perhaps, in time, if the restoration effort can be sustained, native wildflowers will dominate the spring landscape like they did in the past. I stopped here because I'm hearing birds singing. I'm sure I heard a yellowthroat. I think I also heard a red-eyed vireo singing a little further downstream. A little bit ago, I saw a belted kingfisher flying over the creek right behind me. The singing of warblers, vireos, and other songbirds contributes greatly to the beauty of this corridor. So too do the vivid colors characteristic of many species. Haven't spotted that yellowthroat, but I'll keep looking. Many of our songbirds migrate to this location from Central and South America. The blackpoll warbler, which I have photographed in this corridor, is an example. In the spring, blackpolls reach the United States by island hopping across the Gulf of Mexico. They then move overland to their breeding grounds in Canada, stopping in places like this to refuel as they go. In the fall, after fattening up on North American insects, they fly more than 1,500 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, non-stop from the eastern seaboard of the United States to Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil. Learning how they physiologically manage to complete this flight without stopping to drink or refuel absolutely fascinated me as a student, and it still does today. The 9 Mile Creek Corridor is an important breeding and refueling site for our migratory songbirds, and thousands stop here and along the Minnesota River Valley every spring to feed. You might well see a couple of dozen species if you come here for a walk during the first 2 weeks of May. I'm always looking for wildlife as I walk through the corridor. I do not know how many plant and animal species I've identified here, but I'm sure I've seen more than 200 animals, and I've probably identified at least 150 plants. Many visitors to the 9 Mile Creek Corridor are unaware of its biological importance. It has been designated a Minnesota Biological Survey site of high biodiversity significance because it is home to numerous at-risk, threatened, and endangered species. I don't know how many species I've seen and will see today, or if I'll see anything rare, but not knowing what's ahead is what makes trips through the corridor so fun for wildlife lovers like myself. I've decided to stop here for a few minutes in order to point out this little stream. Though I have not looked to see where it originates, I'm confident the water running past me seeps from the corridor wall behind me. The stream is rather cool, and because it's fed by groundwater, it'll stay rather cool throughout the summer. As previously noted, seeps like this historically contributed more water to the creek than they do today, and they kept it cool enough to support trout while stabilizing water levels. Wetlands like this, which are created by seeps, are some of the most endangered communities in Minnesota. They shrink and even dry up when too much pavement is laid and when too much groundwater is withdrawn from aquifers for human uses. I wasn't taking notes when I played here in the 60s, but I think these seep-dependent communities in the corridor are significantly less extensive than they were 60 years ago. What's left should be protected, and it would bother me to see a single square foot sacrificed to accommodate a wider dual-use trail. Growing next to me, by the way, is one of my favorite plants. This is skunk cabbage. It grows profusely in these seep-dependent communities. I find two things about this plant particularly interesting. First, it flowers while there's still snow and ice on the ground, and it is thermogenic. That is, it creates heat which melts away snow and ice. It can, and does, warm itself by more than 25 degrees. Second, this plant produces an unusual flower. It is not a pretty flower, and it doesn't smell sweet. Rather, it has the coloration of rotting flesh, and it stinks. The skunk cabbage flower was not designed by nature to attract the nectar-feeding bees and butterflies that visit most other flowers. Instead, it's been fitted by nature with an odor and an appearance that attracts carrion-feeding insects, especially blowflies. And these serve as its pollinators. Wonderful plant. I've encountered a number of other visitors as I've walked along the trail today. and I've taken time to make them aware of the possible changes coming to the corridor. Many of those I've met were already aware of the changes being considered. From first to last, they've all said they want the corridor maintained much as it is today. 100% are opposed to adding a bike trail of any kind. They fear that mountain bike trails and mountain bikers will diminish the scenic beauty of the park, disturb the peace, and scare away wildlife. Widening and straightening the trail to accommodate cyclists was even more unpopular with those I talked to. One woman I met became upset merely discussing the possibilities and said flatly, that would destroy everything. It would ruin what is here now and make the trail unsafe for me and my dog. I share the concern of some others regarding safety. I believe that cyclists would render this trail unsafe for users like me. I come to this place for the peace and quiet that it offers, and I enjoy losing myself in thought. I generally succeed in leaving the petty worries of everyday life behind when I come here, and I regularly find myself contemplating some of the deepest questions in ecology and philosophy. I lose track of time and spatial awareness, thinking about the nature of time and space. If this trail is open to bikes, I'll jeopardize my safety if I allow myself to be distracted by my thoughts. Perhaps I shouldn't worry. Getting lost in my thoughts might be impossible if the peace is regularly broken by repeated warnings of passing on your left.
May 29th.
Yep, and on this Wednesday, May 29th, you are giving me permission to take your video, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good. So, I asked you if you could stop for a minute to tell me your thoughts on a possible bike trail. Would you like to tell me what you think of the idea of widening the existing trail to accommodate bicyclists?
I do not want it at all. I think it's dangerous for all the bikers. For all the people who walk down here with their dogs, and many kids down here in strollers. There's so many bends in the pathway that we walk that it would be extremely dangerous. Bikers, you wouldn't be able to see them coming because there's so many bends, and I don't want to see all the nice trees to come down. They have to, if they're going to widen it, they're going to take down trees.
That's right. And one way that they could make it safer is to straighten it out.
Right.
But that would take away the nice sight lines that we have now.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so
exactly.
you'd oppose that.
I 100% oppose it. 100%. We definitely do not want it not have the beauty that we have now.
That's right. That's right. I understand because I feel the same way. How often do you come here, and for how long have you been coming here?
I've been coming here for the last 6.5 years because I live in the condo up the hill by across from Moyer Park, and so I love to come down here and listen to the water roaring, and like it is right now, and it's just beautiful.
It is beautiful. Have you talked to others about this?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of people last fall before the referendum was coming through, and every single person I talked to last fall, which was a lot of people, every single one of them agreed with me. Some of them had already voted, absentee ballots, and they already voted no, and unfortunately it passed. But the people that are down here using it, I think definitely do not want it to change.
So the tax dollars, the city has said that they will use a significant proportion of the tax dollars to restore this area, take out exotic species, to prevent bridge erosion and that kind of thing. Would you be okay with that?
Well, if the bridges need to be taken care of, obviously that's a wonderful thing to do, but they don't appear to be. Sometimes the planks get be done, but they could just redo the planks, put in the ones that are sturdier that don't deteriorate, but otherwise I think you don't need to do anything else. Yeah. The erosions of that can be taken care of, but that's just normal maintaining a park.
Yes. I think a lot of people believed when they were voting for the additional tax that most of that money would be used to restore the creek. And
Yeah.
I think they feel a bit betrayed that perhaps more than half of it could be used to cut down trees and to widen the trail.
Yeah, they can fix a lot of things, but just don't touch the trail. You want to repave it, fine, but don't touch the trail. But the beauty of it is the going, the bending and the beauty of the trees, and I don't want anything to change with the trail.
The solitude and serenity just wouldn't be the same if there were mountain bikes or other bikes going through.
No kind of bikes. They're way too dangerous. Way too dangerous. Plus the privacy of the low. Just the beauty of it all. The bikes would make it so dangerous for all the bikers and us, the people who are walking.
I thank you so much for talking to me today. Would you like to share your name?
My name's Mary.
Mary,
and
thank you.
I live real close to the trail, and so I use it pretty much every day.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, you're on.
Okay.
Thanks for talking to me. I think what I'll ask first is just for your first name.
Jeff.
Jeff. And Jeff, would you give me permission to take some video of
Yes.
our conversation and perhaps
This is a
post it?
verbal, release.
A verbal release, exactly. Maybe it might be posted on YouTube or used in some other way,
Right.
and you're comfortable with that.
I am good with it.
Okay. The reason that we were talking a little bit ago is that the city of Bloomington has some plans to do some restoration work down here and possibly widen this trail out, pave it and so forth so that it can accommodate bicyclists of a shared pedestrian bicycle trail. Guess I'm doing all the talking. Let me ask you, what do you think of that? Would that
Well, I like the character of the way the trail is right now. It is a little more rural, or just less urban. And I come down here for a walk. I am a bicyclist. I love bicycling on trails, but trails that are designated for biking, and usually they're combined in with commuting. I don't know that a bicycle trail down here would enhance the experience for people. I think it might deteriorate some people's experience. It is a great walking path. I had been coming here for years, and I recommended it to my wife. She brought some friends out, and they really love it. And I think they liked it because, yeah, you feel like you're in the forest. You're not dodging bikes and that. And that's the way I feel about it. I think it's pretty much developed to what it needs to be, without any extreme measures taken.
A number of people that I talk to tell me that they come down and they walk with friends, or maybe they just walk by themselves, but it's a place where you can walk and chat side by side, and you don't worry about a bike rushing up on you. You have that feeling of security that they aren't coming. Is that important to you when you're here?
Yes, it is. I was going to say, I occasionally walk down by Minnehaha Creek at Minnehaha Falls down to the river. It's pretty much like this here, and that's just a very similar experience. You feel like you're off, and you're not. You might encounter a person walking here and there, and on top of that is, if they do develop this as a bicycle trail, will you get that many more people? I don't think so, because like I was thinking, this is not you'd have to come here just to do the bike trail. You're not going somewhere, doing something other than that. There's plenty of bicycle trails for that, like getting across the river and stuff like that. Different ways to do that. That'd be me.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you talking to me today.
Sure.
Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, bye-bye. The wildlife viewing has not been spectacular today, but it's been enjoyable. Saw a great blue heron, green frog, a tiger swallowtail, giant swallowtail, found a raccoon skull. That was interesting. So we had a good day. It was fun. Could have probably been better, but I started late in the morning. And the best wildlife viewing takes place just after sunrise and again in the twilight hours just before dark. Of course, I might have seen more wildlife, but finding wildlife has been my primary goal. It wasn't. I came here today to produce a video and to talk to other visitors about the future of this place I have loved and admired for so long. I think it's time to go home. I'll be back again. Hopefully, the character of this urban oasis will not soon change, and I'll capture future images and memories like the following. Want to protect the 9 Mile Creek corridor and preserve the pedestrians-only trail, please write the Bloomington City Council and make your wishes known. You can learn more by visiting Restore the 9.